Obviously, like, you run into the little jokes and stuff at school or just in general, because it is 3 16-year-old virgins starting a condom company.
We want to know where to land after the metoo movement. We're not experts, we're not super experienced, but we're genuinely trying to make a difference and figure this out.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great Dear Family podcast episode. I first interviewed Charlotte, Luca, and Jed back on March 20th, about a week after we began sheltering at home, to discuss their incredible company, Condom with a Conversation. You're not going to want to miss this episode to hear how wise and articulate these teenagers are. And we're talking about some pretty awkward stuff like being virgins and how to initiate sex so that everyone involved is happy with the outcome. They've just launched a 3-pack condom box that you can get off of their website just in time to send your kid off to college, whatever that may end up looking like in the fall. But all I know is that when we begin to, quote, open back up, I have a feeling people are going to want to act like bunnies, if you know what I mean. So you and your teenagers or your college students or your young adults, you might as well have this conversation starter pack handy. Thanks so much for listening and subscribing on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And those 5-star reviews, they're really awesome and they're so appreciated. They totally help me grow. So please follow me at Right Now Rachel, that's right with a W, on all the social media platforms. And without further ado, here are the impressive teens we've been waiting for. Under state law, teenagers aren't legally old enough to have sex, but that did not stop 3 teens, Luca Wheeler, Charlotte Sedaka, and Jed Siegel, from forming a condom company and a consent initiative. They're calling it Condom with a Conversation. This amazing trio sourced a 100% FDA-approved condom and designed a package that includes questions encouraging a couple to make sure both parties are on board and feel positive about their decisions. At the height of the metoo movement, Luca came up with this idea after having a meaningful talk with his grandma and mom. While the 3 founders are having provocative discussions about sex, they are also willingly sharing their own truth. They're all virgins. Now, talking about sex isn't exactly in the comfort zone of most teenagers, but Luca, Charlotte, and Jed are opening up about it and encouraging others to do the same. To fund their startup, these young entrepreneurs pitch their friends and family to sell stakes in their company. The condoms have eye-catching packaging with phrases like, yes, ? Or let's talk, and are you good? ? Making the messages crystal clear. They're selling the condoms online and donating 50,000 of them to college campuses across the United States. All 3 teens are currently juniors in high school and looking ahead towards college. Jed is interested in baseball and business. Charlotte is captain on her varsity cheer team, enjoys making films, is a member of the student emergency response team, and is a teen line volunteer. And Luca is interested in sports, entrepreneurship, and theater. I'm so thrilled to welcome our first Gen Z guests to Dear Family. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Well, so at this moment, because we are being asked to social distance, we're all recording from the comfort of our own homes. And I want my listeners to know that I've known Charlotte, Luca, and Jed since they were 5 years old and in kindergarten because they went to elementary school with my oldest daughter, Amber. And now they're all juniors thinking about going off to college. And I've had millennials and Gen Xers and boomers on my podcast, but you are my first Gen Zers, and I'm really excited to get your perspective. So as we record this, Jed and Luca are on their first week of spring break, and Charlotte is still in online school, but we're all sheltering in place. How are you guys doing?
It's been interesting for me because my two siblings who are in college came back because they're done for the year. So I've kind of had to readjust to having them in the house. So that's
And this is Jed, by the way, for the listeners to recognize yours. I bet I can only imagine how your siblings are feeling having to leave college. Wow. What about you, Luca? How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing well overall. It's so weird because, in junior year, it's so kind of action-packed and crazy, having everything just come to a halt with the standardized tests, with school, with sort of everything at once. So I'm a little bit, disoriented, but I'm getting my bearings. It's all right.
Yeah. What about you, Shar?
Yeah, I mean, I just started the online school on Wednesday, and it's definitely an interesting experience. We're using Zoom to have classes. So seeing our teachers, at home is definitely out of the box, not what I'm used to. But it's nice to definitely have some extra time to sleep and get some work done that I didn't get done before.
Good. I like that you're looking for those silver linings. That's good. All right. Well, so as you know, this is a podcast called Dear Family, and it's about mental wellness. But I also love learning about your families, all of which I know and adore. But the listeners, why don't you just each tell them a little bit about yourself and your family? Let's start with Jed.
Okay. So I am the youngest of 3 kids. So it goes me, my brother Miles, who's a freshman in college, and then my older sister Avery, who's a junior in college. And then my mom's name is Anissa, and my dad's name is Tim. And I don't know what else to say, but
that's great. And what about you, Luca?
Yeah, so I have a younger sister. Her name's Amelia. She's in 7th grade at Oakwood School. My parents, Tom and Christina, they're awesome. I don't know what else to say about them, but
totally agree with that.
15, junior at Oakwood.
Right. And Shar?
Yeah, so I'm actually a junior at Viewpoint. I don't go to Oakwood anymore, but I have my 2 siblings both go to Campbell Hall. I have a twin sister. Her name's Amanda, and I have a little brother who's in 8th grade. His name's Michael. And yeah, I have 2 parents, Mark and Samantha. They're pretty great.
Yeah, shout out to all your parents.
Yeah, shout out to them.
All right. Well, so we are here today because we're going to talk about your business, Condom with a Conversation. And why don't we start with Luca? Luca, how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, well, I was, the metoo movement was sort of at its height when I was like a freshman in high school and trying to, starting to consider having like a girlfriend or a relationship. But I was scared because there was so much attention being focused on like how many people would, overlook consent and do pretty horrible things. And all these consequences were like in the air, and everybody was seeing, the negative effects of having, or being intimate with someone. So I didn't really know where anything stood, and I didn't know where to go for that information because of sort of stigmas surrounding talking about, sex and consent and all that. Luckily, in 10th grade, my human development class at Oakwood, I got access to more resources than most kids in high school do because of the progressive nature of my school. But I was just sort of trying to figure out a way to, have people have that conversation, go through the uncomfortableness of, talking about sex and consent with someone because it's important. And I mean, there was revisions to the project. But I think we landed on something that's like, it's simple, but I think it could help someone because it's important to check in. And I mean, yeah.
And didn't you have a conversation with your mom who at one point confided in that she had been a survivor of assault?
Yeah, I did.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. She spared me the details because it would be hard for me to, hear that and hear about that. But she's had bad experiences in the past, really bad ones multiple times. And, I have a little sister, and I'm, growing up in like Studio City near Hollywood, where all this, where Me Too is showing how much horrible stuff goes on in this town. And I wanted to do something to try and prevent my sister from having to go through what my mom went through. And that was a big motivator for me in this process. It was tough to hear, because I started thinking about making this product before I even knew my mom had these, these
Past
problems.
traumas. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was definitely happy I was, trying to make a difference.
That's really awesome, Luca, because it feels very personal to you. So that's a great motivator for sure. And Charlotte and Jed, were you guys immediately on board when Luca came to you?
Yeah, for me, Luca came to me, and I'm the only girl actually on Condom the conversation. And he came to me, and immediately I wanted to be a part of it, just not only for like the female perspective and input on it, but also just growing up like in the heart of like the Me Too movement. It just kind of left me with a bunch of questions about consent. So I just really wanted to get educated on it for myself, but also just to spread awareness and educate others, because I think it's something that like is skipped over a lot in like sex ed and all of that. Like it's not super addressed, and it's more something that's kept quiet. So.
And Jed, did Luca have to twist your arm, or were you immediately on board?
Yeah. So for me, I think he FaceTimed me like right after he had that conversation. He goes like, "Look, I have like an idea that I think we can make into like a real thing." And for me, like when I heard it, I immediately kind of jumped in, because I had a really close friend who had like a really bad situation where he was with his girlfriend, and everyone thought that it was like consensual, and then the girlfriend regretted it, and so then like there was police called, but it was consensual, but she had just regretted it. So I was like, that had happened a month before Luca called me. So I was really like thinking about that for myself, like what if they just like, what could have prevented that?
Yeah,
so then
really
like I heard
powerful.
this, and then yeah,
no, I could see why kids would be nervous about this idea of having sex without having a conversation before. And I love that your company is pushing that conversation. And I just want to say how impressed I am with all of your bravery to come forward and just admit, one, that you're a virgin, because, by sharing your truth and your honesty, you're getting others to come forward and say like, look, this is where we're at. And we want to have conversations about sex and encourage others to do the same. Were you at all embarrassed to come forward and discuss that? Or is this like a new Gen Z thing where kind of that just openness is part of your generation?
For me, at least, I wasn't initially. I had really no hesitation with coming forward, like being a virgin, anything along those lines. I never had any hesitation towards it. Obviously, like you run into the little jokes and stuff at school or just in general, because it is 3 16-year-old virgins starting a condom company.
Right.
So it definitely is something that's like not ordinary. So there's things that come with that. But personally, I haven't had any hesitation towards putting myself out there, just because I know like if it does make a difference in any small way, like it's worth it.
I love that.
There was some apprehension. It's not in high school. It's not the first instinct of a guy to come forward and talk about his virginity. So there was definite hesitation, but I felt like, the project could do so much good, but it had to be received the right way, and it had to be perceived as the sort of innocent, like from the outside looking in sort of thing, rather than like, I guess, like some teenagers tearing it up and thinking they know everything about consent. I mean, because we don't. We wanted to make it clear that we are starting this because we're trying to figure it out just like everybody else. We want to know where to land after the Me Too movement. We're not experts. We're not super experienced, but we're genuinely trying to make a difference and figure this out. So I felt like it was necessary for me to, share or be open about my virginity in order to, show people that this is coming from a pure place and not, not ill intent.
Yeah, you know what? I just had a thought. It's like you're not just protecting yourself from like sexually transmitted diseases or pregnancy. You're protecting your, just health, your mental health by having these conversations. And by being so honest, you're starting from like ground zero. And that's so smart. It really is. So I am curious what you think. What does consent mean? Now, I know you have a great video, which I will be posting in the show notes, but I'd love to hear it from you. What does consent mean?
I think it's tricky. I think it's complicated. It's definitely, from talking to people, it's become clear that the laws are extremely restrictive, but also people are not well informed about the laws specifically. Not a lot of people we've talked to or interviewed know anything about them. And consent really, it's confusing because it's so different between, or in every different circumstances. Consent really is like, excitement from both parties that's, like made extremely clear and apparent. But that takes different forms for different people. Some people, I don't know, it's really a gray area, which is why we want to start talking about it, because something that we've faced in this process is the question of, is there even one definition of consent? And the restrictions the laws make of no alcohol, no drugs, no one, like people have to be of age. They make a lot of different people like technically like rapists and stuff. And that doesn't really get us anywhere, because a lot of the times, like a 17-year-old with an 18-year-old, if they were in a relationship, like it is consensual, but in the eyes of like the law, it's not. So it's definitely not just what the law says. I think, silence isn't consent. Like there's a lot of things that aren't consent, but it's hard to nail down what is consent.
Yeah, I think that part of what we learned by shooting the video is that everyone kind of has a different meaning of consent to them. And that is why it's so important to talk about it, because there is no just one definition that everyone can agree on. So that's why like you and your partner have to make your form of consent, and that's why you have to talk about it.
Through it all, like obviously, ideally, you'd like to say consent is an affirmative yes with a period, no hesitation, no like substances, everyone's above 18. But in reality, there are so many different circumstances where that's just not possible most of the time. And, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean everyone, like Luca said, who's not, 100% sober or says yes with a period, like that doesn't mean you're a rapist. But it's just a matter of, I think talking about it and having that conversation so that everyone is on the same page. And that you understand like where each person is coming from in the relationship, rather than, having that affirmative yes.
Which is why what you guys are doing is so helpful, because let's be honest, sex is awkward. And especially like the first time you're having sex with somebody, it's especially awkward. And here you are giving people something to kind of like take them out of that awkwardness and look at together. And I think that's really great. So does consent have to have the word yes in it?
Legally, yeah, it needs to be an affirmative yes.
Okay.
All the laws and stuff are super, strict and restrictive because they have to be. They're doing their best to protect people. So yeah, in the eyes of the court, it should be an affirmative verbal yes. But really, the goal of all of this is just to make sure people are, happy and comfortable with their decisions and their experiences. So in the eyes of the court, it should be verbalized and affirmative. But in reality, two people who've been dating for a long time and sort of know each other and want to, go about it, both people are engaging and enthusiastic. I think consent doesn't have to be verbal and affirmative there, as long as both people. There's physical cues. There's a lot of different factors.
But that only happens like once they've like set that boundary with each other.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the other person, like their feelings about everything. And the best way to do that, we think, is, talking about it.
Yeah. I think it's just like making sure that extra step is taken and like acknowledging the situation and, evaluating each person's feelings and what they want. Whether or not they have an affirmative yes, I don't think that will happen every time. I don't think that's our intention that will happen every time. But it's just hoping that people with our product will take that extra second to really evaluate what they want to do and what their partner wants to do.
And it also makes it easier for them to have that conversation because it's kind of like a starter.
Yeah.
It's starting it for them. That's really great. All right. So, statistically, your generation is having sex later on than generations in the past. Why do you think that is?
I think it's fear. I think it's the way that we've grown up, in the heart of the metoo movement, with sort of the stigma and taboo surrounded around, sex and all of that. I think a lot of people are just scared to, take that step or make a mistake. And so because of that, we're sort of waiting, which isn't necessarily a bad or a good thing. But I think having fear around sex isn't, ideal. And to get a little bit less of fear and more educated towards it would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I also think technology is contributing to that sort of transition because, there's less and less, person-to-person interaction going on because of how convenient screens are and how social media makes us all so connected and disconnected at the same time. So like human-to-human interaction is awkward and hard for a lot of people because the majority of their time is either spent communicating through that screen or just not communicating at all. So I guess it's just set us back a few years in our, process of engaging other people.
I'm wondering if you think that like the proliferation of porn and kids watching porn so early on and it being kind of like these images that are so jarring, do you think that might have a contributing effect?
Yeah, probably. It's very accessible, which is a problem. Because a lot of people are like, I guess that's connected to the screen sort of thing. It's like they avoid human interaction. They don't want to be rejected. So it's easier, I guess, to just watch porn and avoid having to go through any awkwardness or get rejected, which I definitely think is a contributor.
Like screens have definitely, I think, played a huge role in that and kind of set us back. However you want to phrase that, set us back or forward, depending on how you look at it.
Right, because whereas your parents' generation and my generation, we were, kind of forced to get outside if we wanted to be social. You can very easily feel like you're kind of being social by looking through Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And so, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we're on, social distancing and isolating ourselves right now. And I'll tell you, I have no lack of socializing with my friends. It's just the technology, I think, definitely does contribute, because I mean, I don't need to see them in person to talk to them or to be with them. So I think the same applies to why we're not, having sex earlier.
Right. I also have heard that your generation is more risk adverse because, you have all this information, which is making you so aware, which is good, but it's also, maybe a little bit anxiety producing. And so there's that as well. So you all went to or currently go to a very progressive school in North Hollywood, which is called Oakwood. And they do this thing called the Glove Affair, which I have never been to because I think it's just student driven. I know you participated in it this year. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because like some people that are not familiar with Glove Affair, they may be kind of shocked in a way to learn what it is, but I'd love to hear about it from you.
Yeah, so we went to Glove Affair this year. It was really great. It's basically fundraising to spread awareness about safe sex and sexual violence prevention and gender identity. It basically was a huge condom party. It's amazing.
But this is just for high school kids, right?
Yeah, it's the high school at Oakwood School. It's an event that happens each year, and we went and we gave out, I think we brought 1,000 condoms or something, and we just gave out condoms and had our video playing and just spread awareness about, condom the conversation, but also consent, because it is a huge part of, sexual violence and obviously everything that comes with what Glove Affair is going for.
I mean, just because I saw on social media, other kids are doing like art projects based on it, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little more.
It's basically, so we have like a couple of events at Oakwood, and most of them are 100% student run or just very like one teacher sponsor, a couple teacher sponsors, and then the kids do the rest. So basically anyone who wants to can join the club. They have like a club at school, and you can either make like art installations that they have a bunch around, and then they have like photo booth type of things where like you can go and it's like a photo opportunity. But all the stuff for this particular event, because it's Glove Affair, it's all like based around condoms. So they'll make like condom art pretty much.
So progressive. I love it.
Yeah, and the main focus of it is, it started as like an AIDS awareness thing. Like the people from AIDS Walk LA come, and they have a booth there, and they give out like AIDS Walk hats and shirts and stuff like that. And they also have Glove Affair. Every year they make a different Glove Affair shirt, which is designed by one of the students, which is cool because even after the event ends, you'll see kids walking around with the shirt. So that's
And then
cool.
Are other kids invited from other schools if they want to attend, or is it just
Yeah. Anyone, if you want to bring someone, you just sign them up pretty much, and then they can come.
So great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
I mean, I haven't gone to Oakwood since 8th grade, and I go to Glove Affair. It's great. Yeah, it's definitely anyone in high school who, and even beyond that, I know there are parents there as well. Anyone can come because, everyone goes through it.
So you are a perfect booth at that Glove Affair.
Right.
So why do you think communicating is so important in this era of the Me Too movement? And do you think that, like, and I'll ask the guys this question. Are you like, does this make you more fearful to touch a girl now? Or does it, I'm curious just how you're feeling.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, people refer to the Me Too movement as sort of like swinging the pendulum, right? To get to that center place where everybody's comfortable and safe, we have to like go back and forth. we're definitely at a place where I'm always thinking about, making sure the other person's comfortable and happy and, feels safe. It's definitely affected like my mindset about the whole thing. It's created some hesitation, which is, it was what motivated this project. It was, educating ourselves so that we could educate others and make it less scary. We're trying to sort of establish some resolution so that we can, our generation can go forward not having the problems like surrounding consent that there were in the past. But I'd be lying if I was going to say that I wasn't, feeling pressure as a man to, checking more than, I think I would in the past, which I think it's absolutely a good thing. But it does create some apprehension and fear.
Yeah. Like for me also, like I told you, I have like that experience with one of my friends where he had a girlfriend. They talked about it for about a week before it happened. It was completely consensual, and he's like, and the cops were still called. So that part of it, that's scary to me, but I also think it's helped a lot of people.
Right, because I mean, it makes sense, it's kind of instilled some fear, but maybe on speaking of pendulum, it's a little bit of healthy fear, and to normalize, like even starting by saying like, can I hold your hand? I mean, something as simple as that, so, and I think what you're doing is really helpful, especially because it is so awkward. And you're helping teens and young adults, and who knows, maybe, older adults, right? Have these conversations that they might not have had. So are teens even going out on dates anymore? Are you finding that happening?
I mean, yes, but it's more of like if you're in an established relationship, you'll go get lunch. It's not like, oh, would you like to go on you like someone, oh, would you like to go on a date? It's not as much chivalry as there used to be, I think,
right.
Or at least as you see in like the movies. So in that regard, no, it's not the same, which sucks. There definitely are, a few little dates and things that still go on.
And again, you all talked about how technology contributed to that. So, Charlotte, I had asked you all to maybe think about some questions. And one of the questions you sent me was, why should consent not just be something that only happens in the bedroom?
I think oftentimes when we talk about consent, you automatically go to like when you're having sex, giving consent, not giving consent. But I think it's more than that. And, us being virgins, we use consent. Everyone does. In everyday life, whether that is like, asking to do something, asking for something, you're asking for consent essentially. So just continuing with that practice in the bedroom, I think is important and often overlooked, that they are similar things, which also means, they're important not to mix up. Because I think consent is important beyond just in the bedroom.
That makes total sense. And regarding, the media's portrayal of high school sex, you had mentioned this earlier, but what are the stigmas that come with consent in regards to gender and age?
I think it's there's a lot of, well, first of all, I think there's a lot of pressure or expectations for, guys to be experienced and to sort of know what the girl's thinking, and this sort of, the guy needs to be chasing the girl and the girl needs to be, sort of hesitant and like pushing back a little bit, that the scene is playful for a long time. There's an expectation of a girl being, sort of saving herself and a guy being super experienced. But there's also, it's very rare in, the media for consent to be portrayed as, like slow, like talked about. It's almost always like somehow both people always know what the other's thinking, and then they sort of just go for it without like hesitation or talking about it, which I think is dangerous because it creates that, like, it sort of teaches kids that that's how it's, that's how sex is supposed to work. But in truth, like, there needs to be a conversation because talking about it is so important, and it's impossible to be perfectly on the same page with someone without, talking to them about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely stigmas in society, and thanks to, the media about, like, women, if, you have sex, you're considered, like, too straightforward, or, like, other words. I don't know, like, what
You can say it. You can say it. This is explicit.
Like, you're considered, like,
a slut or
whatever. If you, sleep around or have sex before, you're married, or it's deemed appropriate, or if you're in a long relationship, there's just so many different constraints and rules that go along with it. And then if you don't have sex and you have a boyfriend, you're considered like a prude or whatever. So I think it's just sort of eliminating all of that and saying, if you're ready, have a conversation, talk about it, see if your partner's ready, go for it if they are. Do what you want, just make sure everyone's comfortable. Rather than, trying to uphold any stereotypes, because no matter what you do, you're contradicting one or the other.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And I think the media's portrayal of high school sex makes it seem like every teenager out there is having sex, which is not the case.
Yeah.
It just makes maybe good TV for teenagers, but yeah, that is not the case. So, I know that I have to imagine at the moment, because of social distancing, people are forced to kind of be separated. But I have to also imagine that when this pandemic is over, your sales are going to skyrocket because people are going to want to get out there and get very close to one another. I foresee that. I'm really curious, how did you pitch Condom with a Conversation to your investors, and tell us how business is going?
Yeah, business is going pretty good. I mean, the social distancing has slowed things a little bit, expectedly.
Right. I mean, everything's slowed, right?
Exactly. But to pitching this to investors, I mean, we were sort of just, we were saying, hey, like, this is our attempt to spread awareness about consent, start a conversation between individuals, but also on like a larger scale. We shared there with them our goal of just, spreading, awareness about consensual sex. And, I mean, from a business standpoint, like, there's a lot of colleges that we ideally want to connect with, because there are so many problems with consent on college campuses, obviously. But also, I mean, the majority of our pitch was just, asking people for help in our sort of pursuit of helping one person, take a second to check in and make sure, everybody's on board. Because if this thing can help, can remind one person to take that extra step and ask that question and see if their partner is, okay, it could really help someone. And I know, like, because of my mom, which we talked about earlier, I know how much that negative experience can affect someone. So yeah, I mean, checking in it could mean a world difference for that person for the rest of their life. I mean, it's really, truly so important, which was, why we wanted to do this in the first place.
Right. I mean, this isn't just a small little idea. This is potentially life-saving, and because, again, this podcast is about mental wellness, this could truly save your mental health. If you're dealing with so many questions about whether or not something was forced or non-consensual, as opposed to, like, having conversations from the beginning, that again is huge. Jed or Shar, do you want to comment on the business and
Yeah. I mean, for the investment side, I think all of us we're lucky that we have, because some of the investors are our parents. So I think, we're lucky that we have really supportive parents, which not everyone has, which has really been a boost. Also, because I know they all kind of have experience, so we've also just been able to talk to them about running the business, which is, I think, really helped us, which is really nice to have. And then also for the rest of the people, like what Luca was saying, and then for the business end, it's it's bad. It's kind of funny that we officially launched the site. I think it was we launched it on Glove Affair, but we couldn't. You couldn't actually buy the condoms till about a week or two ago. So we haven't really even had business without Corona. So it's been interesting, and we have gotten some interest in it. And I definitely think, to what you were saying before about once it's over, it's kind of gonna change our lifestyles, at least for a little bit, not maybe permanently, but so I think also definitely there'll be a big spike once this kind of is over, hopefully soon. But
I think people are going to be so happy to not have to social distance anymore and be able to hug one another and be face to face, and in reality that's great.
Yeah, just to add on, definitely what Jed said, my parents were nothing but supportive when, we discussed it with them. What was interesting was telling my grandparents about Condom with the conversation, and, having that phone call about, what it is and why we're doing it. Initially there were definitely the giggles and, are you serious? But overall, pitching to investors or just getting support from family and friends, it's been nothing but great. And again, like Jed was saying, and Luca added on to, we know nothing but Corona business. So we'll see how it goes after this whole thing is, a bit more settled.
Well, it's also just such a great learning experience for you while you're still in high school to get a business up and running. That's really great life experience in addition to doing this kind of social experiment. All right, so now we are coming to the end, and I ask all my guests these same two questions. And normally I ask if you could write your younger 20-year-old self a love letter. But because you are all 17, is that correct? You're all 17 at this point, right?
I'm 17.
Yeah. Why don't we say if you could write your younger 12-year-old self? So you just graduated elementary school and you're going into middle school. And you're writing yourself a love letter. You're looking back and giving yourself some advice. So why don't we just start with Jed? What would you say, a Dear Jed love letter? What would you tell yourself?
I don't know. I think I would definitely tell myself, going into middle school, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be harder than elementary school, and just to stay true to kind of what you want to do and what you enjoy, and not be focused on what others want from you, and more what you want for yourself, and put yourself first instead of maybe how others see you or how you think you might be perceived if you do a certain thing. So kind of just stay true to what you want to do and put yourself first.
That's great. And guess what, Jed? I think that's good advice for adults too.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay. What about you, Shar?
Yeah, probably, something along the lines of, things happen for a reason. So don't, kick yourself every time something doesn't go right. You'll learn from it, which is definitely something, I'm still trying to learn, but I definitely would have liked to start enforcing that idea earlier. Just, going with the flow and knowing like sometimes things don't work out, but it's not necessarily your fault. But just keep going, stay strong.
Great advice to just kind of, I like the idea of going with the flow and not getting caught up in worrying about every little thing, because it is important to kind of remain fluid. All right. What about you, Luca?
I'd just say, middle school and high school there's some dangerous terrain. Be careful. Like, be careful about losing yourself. Be careful about changing yourself. Try your best to avoid falling into the patterns and giving into this sort of social structure of high school, because it can really put a cap on how creative you can be and how you can be. So I would say, be yourself, stay true to who you are, embrace the quirky sides of you that don't necessarily work and aren't necessarily cool in middle school and high school. And also just do your best to limit the amount of video games and screens you play, because there's like a whole world out there, and it's important to engage it.
You guys, those are awesome love letters, truly. And all the advice you just gave like transfers to all the different generations. So that's very wise. You're wise beyond your years. All right, last question. What do you do that brings you happiness? Like, what is it that you do that grounds you? And especially like in a time like now, what are you doing that's just kind of bringing you joy? And we'll go in the same order. Why don't we start with Jed?
Oh, okay. So I don't know. For me, it's kind of been tough. I like playing basketball. Like, I don't know. For me, if I'm like troubled about something, I can just kind of go and just shoot around, and that's kind of really relaxing to me because I don't really have to like think about anything. But it's been tough the last couple of days because it's been raining, so that's like not the best. But I don't know. I think that really like brings me joy just because I don't have to think about the rest of the world, kind of, and I can just think, about like being present and what I'm doing, and I don't have like the stress of everything else.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's like your kind of form of like a moving meditation where you get out of your mind and into your body.
Yeah.
That's really great. What about you, Shar?
For me, I mean, as cliche as it is, like just being around people, obviously I can't be close to my friends right now physically or like with them. But just constantly on a FaceTime call or talking to them just sort of distracts me a lot from reality and, keeps me sane most of the time with being stuck in my house.
So that social connection is what brings you happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've always been social. Mm-hmm. What about you, Luca?
Yeah. I mean, this is something I've been sort of trying to nail down, trying to figure out, because junior year I've sort of made the decision that, happiness comes second, because there's so much there's so many expectations I feel like I have to hold myself to. But really it's for me, it's all about separating like what brings me pleasure versus what brings me true joy. And there's a lot of things like playing video games with Jed is fun. But spending time with my family and my dogs and, watching a movie or playing a board game, like that's when I'm really happy. And so, I guess it's sort of similar to Charlotte. It's just connecting with loved ones and, remembering, how much love and support is in my life. And that's, for me, that's where genuine happiness comes from.
So amazing. Well, I have to say, I wish you could see me right now. I have a huge smile across my face. I'm going to sound like your parents, but I'm so proud of you all. And I just, you give me a lot of hope for the future, because you are all young people that are selflessly not, thinking about others and not just yourself. And I know that this is going to help continue a great conversation. So last question is, where can the listeners find you?
Ooh, I can touch on that.
Yeah, tell us.
We have our website, condomwithaconversation.com. It has a lot of resources about, if you have anything with sexual violence, it's not just about consent. There's everything there. You have like a page about, your legal age for consent in each state. We have our video on there that was directed by Alina Foley. And then also we have an Instagram page called Condom with a Conversation. And then,
which I love, by the way. It's really good. Really well done.
And then on our website, obviously, there are ways to contact us and things like that. So just our website and our Instagram are definitely main two ways of contacting us.
Great. Well, I will have that and your video in the show notes. And I just want to thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, stay healthy and informed. And I look forward to seeing you in person soon. Bye, you guys.
Bye. Thank you
so much.
Bye. Take care. Speak soon.
Thank you.
This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.